Yeah, so it's Monday, Mizpah. You know what that means?
All day. It means I don't get a lay-in, and it's not a particularly good night for going out clubbing.
I guess it depends on if you work tomorrow. Either way,
Is that
I see you, and you look different.
why do I look different?
I think it might be the DuckTales hairstyle. You've got this like little tuft here, and then you got this little in the back. It's like a little tail.
Yeah, but how else do I get to say DuckTales? Oh wow! I mean, that's got to be worth it. Absolutely, all by itself. Hello, folks. It is Monday. It is MMO Buff, and it's time to do one of those great, fun, techie shows with numbers and maths and facts and figures and a glass of cider.
Wow.
What more could we possibly do?
Cherry
hello, the
drinks.
world.
That would be a good thing, because I love my cherry drinks. Hello to everybody who has shown up. Hello to Calabrus, sorry. Hello, Screenager. Hello, Mitchell. Hello, Aussie. Hello, Drusty Blood. Hello, Harsey as well. Remember, folks. Oh, also, hello to you, Goddess of Destruction. It is brilliant to see you.
Possibly forget the Goddess of Destruction, because
No.
I think forgetting the Goddess of Destruction would be painful. We'd probably get destroyed.
Absolutely. Also, as a reminder, if you have a question, tonight's show is going to be really in depth because we're tackling probably one of the biggest issues that can cause a guild or a community to kind of be destroyed, and that's how you distribute
Implode.
loot in a raid environment. And we're going to be discussing all kinds of loot distribution models. We're going to tackle some terms people may not be aware of. We're even going to discuss fairness in all ways, shapes, and forms. So if you have a comment, please put a Q and a colon in front of it so that just in case Mizpah and I are in the process of doing what we normally do, which is like oil and water here and fighting out a topic or something like that, Harsey can pick it up and put it into our show notes so that we can come back and tackle it all the same. We kind of want to make certain we hit it. This is a huge topic, and we have some caveats before we begin.
Caveat number 1.
Caveat number 1. I am purposefully, occasionally throughout this show, going to take on the stance of a devil's advocate. This means that you will occasionally hear me say things that you go, Pseudo? What is wrong with you, Pseudo? Who are you? Why would you say something like this? That's because
Occasionally?
you say that about, well, that's the thing. You're like that with me all the time. It makes a difference who you are, or it makes a difference, what we discuss. But you're going to hear me purposely try to goad Mizpah into certain kinds of directions. You're also going to hear me challenge a lot of things that we're going to discuss, because what is the point of both Mizpah and I sitting here discussing something when we both sit and spend the entire time going, yeah, that's right. That's boring. So I am purposely going to be doing everything I can to make him stop being a filibuster and actually explain it in terms that people may not get, or I may challenge him and say, you're wrong. So be aware that there are going to be some non-pseudo activity going on here.
Caveat number 2.
When dealing with loot, and this is not written down. You make it sound like we actually have these in the show notes, and we don't. So we're kind of doing this on the fly. But caveat number 2, in today's show, when discussing loot, we kind of have to put it into a framework. And in order for us to really explain how loot distribution systems can make, break, or how they are fair, how they're not fair, why they would work with one system instead of another system, why you might do X, Y, or Z, we must put it into the framework of experience. Now, I have quite a bit of experience setting up a whole bunch of different loot distribution systems for a variety of different communities, because I've been in a few, led quite a few, and there you go. And Mizpah, as everyone is pretty much familiar with, is a guild leader and has been also asked by various guilds to build DKP systems for those guilds. So he has the experience of not just Enigma, but he has the experience of what other guilds wanted as well.
Caveat number 3.
Mizpah is a frog. As long as you remember.
Ribbit.
See, your voice still isn't quite where it needs to be. You still got this sort of scratchy thing going. So you're a frog better for today's show.
Indeed. So guys, loot distribution.
Yes, and PX Adams has already started throwing out questions, Harsey. Please make certain you grab them.
Yeah, and I will relish doing Q&A on the post show after this one because I kind of like this topic. I'm strange.
Well, I am also going to throw out, this is the first in several that we discuss loot, because we want to make certain that before we go into actual loot distribution, and hello Gothic Slicer, thanks for joining us, but before we go into the real hardcore side of things, we want to make certain you guys understand some of the terminologies, or understand why in a future episode, if we say that is not fair because of X, Y, and Z, you can come back to this episode and know exactly what we were referring to and why.
Okay, so the wondrous topic of loot distribution, topics like DKP, fairness, otherwise known as how to cause your guild to implode, erupt, spontaneously combust, hang, draw, quarter itself, diverge, split, break down, or turn itself into a human Catherine wheel. Easily done. Upset people off the back of how you give out the shinies. We all like to say that we don't raid, we don't play games, we don't do stuff for shiny stuff, but I have to say, an awful lot of gamers, and I'm one of them, we kind of like those shiny things. If you're going to go and knock over the big dragons, you've got to have a good way of actually dealing with it. What do you do when 40 people work for weeks and one sword of awesomeness drops? Who gets it? Why do they get it? Does the guild leader get it because he's awesome? Probably not, but it does happen in some places.
It does. I have
Does
seen
the
some
tank
builds like that.
Does the tank get it because he's the tank? Well, I might argue that for a shield. I wouldn't necessarily argue that for a sword unless it's got tanking stats on it. We've
Do
got
me
a
a favor.
myriad of things to get into here.
Back up from your mic just a little bit because you're getting close, and with your scruffy voice, it's getting scruffy. So,
There we go.
is that a
Does
little,
that help?
just a little closer?
A little closer.
No, that's too
Does
much
we
closer.
have to kill the microphone? No, we not kill the microphone.
No.
I moved the microphone here.
You
Does
moved
this
them-
work?
Move the microphone back just a little. Now that you have
Move the
it back,
microphone on the back. Further
Yes.
away from the mouth.
this is away from the mouth. Now,
How is that?
Now you must do the most important thing. Get excited randomly about some random topic so I can tell whether you're going to hurt me.
Probably. But it's much more fun to surprise you later.
Just for me, please. Just get excited about something.
But I can get really excited about cheese because that's really exciting.
Why do you
Or
lean
something like
closer
that.
to your mic when you get excited?
I have no idea. But let's move on.
Anyway. So I'm told I'm too far back, so I get to get closer to my mic. You get to get further from your mic, and hey, maybe somewhere in the middle we'll meet. But anyway,
We'll
yes.
see what happens. Let's start with the
Quick
structure.
bite right there.
We've had a fair bit of preamble. You guys all know what's up. Let's get down to it.
Can we throw
So
a
we
question to
have a
start?
little bit of structure. We can have a question to start, yes.
Yeah, I want to throw a question out to everybody who is present. I am assuming that everyone in some way, shape, or form has participated in some guild or community where there has been some kind of loot distribution available. And it can be anything from your 5-man group running around up to you being a part of a 72 guild or 72 raid size for something like EverQuest or what have you. I want to know what people believe is the best distribution system for loot in their opinion. Now, I'm not going to say you guys can start ripping each other's throats out, because as you will learn through some of the things we discussed tonight, there are some key points that people miss regardless of how much they think something is fair. So just let us know in the chat. Just tell us loot model that you think is the best one. Now, based on that, I think it's worth us actually discussing why loot models are important in the first place. What do you think?
Okay. I think it's a pretty good call. So why are distribution models important for loot? Simply put, so there are some shared expectations as to who gets the shinies.
Is
Easiest
it all
way
about
to
the
put it?
shinies? See,
It,
some of
qu- it, qu- it quite often is. Let's be candid. The shinies might be a means to the end, and I'd argue they should be. They should be tools to allow you to unlock the next tier of content, but they still exist as physical objects or virtual pixelated objects, and we still need to deal with them.
Well, see, I would throw into the reason why we need to have loot distribution models is because people like to be rewarded for their time. Doesn't necessarily mean with shinies, but people like to see, maybe it's just me, but it's something that is inherent in me. When I click on the start task button in my list of to-dos, and because I have to keep track of time because, I'm a consultant and you're paid for so much time you spend on stuff, so you have to keep track. I like looking at how much time I have put into something and how much I've accomplished in that certain period of time. So some people like to actually see the rewards they're getting for the work they're putting in. And anyone who wants to argue that the point behind, whether rating should be work or fun or what have you, that's an entirely different show. We're not focusing on that here. What we're talking about is just the reward for time spent. Whether you see that as fun time or whether you see it as work time, that's not the debate or the discussion. So.
And I think Mishtel has just invented Monk DKP. I have to say that's one that I wasn't familiar with, but we'll actually invent that one and deal with it later. You're giving me an idea.
Oh no. Are we going to come up with like the MMOBuff model of distribution for loot?
I'm actually not sure, because although I could make a mathematical argument as to the best, quote-unquote, system for loot distribution, it's best for what purpose, it's best for what criteria, and that's a huge part of the question. So we've seen a ton of different answers, which is
DKP,
really cool.
A question come up real quick. What does DKP stand for? Dragon Kill Points. Oddly enough, it actually stems back from EverQuest.
Yep.
So
EverQuest, one guild who were running around killing dragons, and they wanted a way to formalize a form of currency, if you like. Who did work to get the currency to buy the stuffs? And they became DKP, Dragon Kill Points. Everyone can call them different things. We've actually had them called cheese points at one point in Enigma's history, just for fun. There's a bit of an in-joke there, but they've gone back to being DKP recently.
Right. Now, as a reminder to everyone, the caveat is, as we go deeper and deeper into this topic, I am going to be saying things that I don't necessarily believe in, and I need to stress that for people who are just showing up. So please don't think that Pseudo is weird or crazy. Just know that Pseudo is going to be putting on multiple personalities, and one of those personalities is so going to poison you the next time I see you. Do you think it would work if I just put laxative in your coffee because you're so obsessed with it?
No.
Would you be able to tell the difference?
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
So,
Pseudo, from
models,
the show notes, take us through it.
Yeah, loot models, as we know, are very, very important because when you have a whole bunch of people together, there needs to be some way to distribute loot, because by design, game designers don't say, you have 40 people in your group, we're going to have 40 items drop. It doesn't work that way. I've yet to run across a game where they've really enjoyed that in an MMO model. So you need some way to fairly distribute loot. Now, this is where we get into the most complex, yet the most simplest concept when it comes to why loot distribution systems exist in the first place. What the hell does fair mean? This is where a lot of the problems are. We can throw out a whole bunch of different models and we can tackle why these models suck and why they're good, what their advantages and disadvantages of. But the end is always trying to make a fair and balanced system. That is
absolutely.
That's the basics behind it.
So let's even go back one more step. You are a guild, a group, an organization, a collective, a whatever you might be. And you're going to run around in whatever game it might be. It's probably that Badger MMO we were talking about a few weeks ago.
Or it could be Lopzilla's MMO, or it could be your MMO.
Your first thing you have to decide as a group is, what are your aims with the loot distribution system? Are your aims to reward the people that put in the most effort, do the most work? Are your aims to reward the people that are most consistent? Are your aims to give an even distribution of loot? Are your aims to allocate gear and rewards in such a fashion that the group has the greatest chance to progress? Are your aims to reward the officers and long-standing members for their long service? Are your aims to, and the list can just go on and on and on. Your aims could be to give the loot to the people that whine the most to shut them up. I have some sympathy, but I would argue it's not a very good loot distribution system.
But it's a goal. That's
it's a potential goal.
It's a potential goal. There may be that, who can be the whiniest, etc. I've seen someone bring up here, that they've had systems that people were rewarded for topping meters or for taking the least damage from a
Yep.
fire, or, that's built into how you give the rewards. But what was the goal behind it? Was it because you guys were progressive, or was it because of the fact that you guys just wanted to make certain people learned, or were you really having problems? I mean,
It's incentivizing something based on
sorry
how many
about
times
that.
someone's phone goes off randomly is actually a really good way of running a distribution system. Now, if you know what you want to incentivize, you can pick and select and choose the systems to do it. You can take a core
Correct.
system, you can modify aspects of it. In a standard DKP system that we'll get to in a moment, you can turn around and say, hey, reward for killing the boss. That's the simplest form of
Ooh.
incentivization, but it has its own issues. So the first thing to decide is, what are you trying to achieve? And ultimately you're going to juggle two things, I suspect, as most groups. This is simplifying, but we've got to simplify somewhere to get the
Well,
ball rolling.
we have to start simple. We can really start to dig in.
So let's split onto two paths. You want to keep everyone happy with the perception or reality of fairness. That's path one. I pick my words very carefully.
You are picking your words carefully. You're
Path
being very
two.
careful.
You want to encourage an atmosphere of progression and for the guild to be able to be progressive. And by progression, I mean to progress through content in an optimal fashion.
Okay, so that's two very different stipulations that you're putting down. Now, it can be debated out. I'm not going to put on the devil's advocate for this, because there needs to be a purpose. I mean, if you are just a group of people who join together in LFR, everyone kind of understands that something's going to occur loot-wise in there that's not necessarily fair, but loot distribution models are not built for LFR. They are actually built for communities and guilds to basically reward that community and guild and the internal individual players as a whole. So yes, I will sit back and not devil's advocate you, although I will state you are being very pedantic about your choice of words there, Ms.
Pedantic is good with this topic, it must be said.
Oh, okay, sir.
So-
Yes, do tell us, what more pedantic things do you wish to include?
Many more. But I haven't got the cravat or the silk pajamas on quite yet. Let's take a comment, something I want to start with that I think people... Well, I'm going to ask a question.
Oh, questions
Very
to the audience.
simple question. It has a yes answer and a no answer.
Mhm.
And people can make a choice. Here is the question. Is randomness fair? And I'm going to pause and filibuster for a few seconds and let people think on that. Is randomness fair?
Yes or
We are
no?
familiar with the concept of random in a game.
Don't try to explain it, guys. Just literally put yes or no. That's what we want to see here.
20 people, 40 people, 72 people, 169.5 people turn up to kill a boss. One item drops. Everyone rolls a 14-sided dice, or everyone rolls a 1,000-sided dice. It doesn't matter. People, the tie-in rolls keep rolling until one person has the highest roll. It's one of the simplest examples of random. Is that fair? Is randomness fair?
Okay, we've got randomness is not fair. Yes, yes, no. By definition, yes. Yes or no or yes. No, maybe? Yes. I missed the question. Yes, as long as they were present when the loot was dropped. No. Obviously, yes. By itself? No. Okay, so basically what we see here is...
We have a winner, by the way.
Of course we have a winner. But as we can see, when it comes to the actual concept of what is fair, even that is up for debate. But, Mizpah.
Okay. Here is the statement that people are not going to like.
Oh, no, we need to answer this.
I'm about to add to this.
No, I want a yes or a no, because I need to know whether I'm actually putting on my devil's advocate hat or not.
Okay. If I have to answer the same question, is randomness fair? I say no.
And I will have to then take on the yes. Yes, it is fair. Also, might I also point out, I hate you so much right now. Making me take this route. I hate you. But anyway.
Let me, before I elaborate in real detail, let me state a few things about the concept of random. Let me ask everyone here to pick up a coin. Virtual or physical, take your pick. Take that coin, and the next time you're really bored, so probably not now, because you're probably hopefully interested in what we're talking about, toss that coin 50 times. Count the heads, count the tails. It's pretty random, as long as you're doing it reasonably fairly. There's a lot of other factors involved, but a coin does not have any form of memory. Now, if randomness was inherently fair, you'd have a 50-50 distribution on those coin flips. You're not really going to see that in the real world. You're going to get heads X times in a row. You're going to get tails X times in a row. Some people will go, hey, I got 50%. Others will say, I got 72% heads. Okay, tell you what, toss that coin another 100 times. How about another 100? How about another 1,000? How about another 10,000? Now, you're probably not going to want to sit there keeping on flipping that coin. But the reality is, the longer you flip that coin for, the more likely you are to head towards a 50-50 distribution of those heads and those tails. Now, here's a very simple point to kick off the discussion as to why randomness is not fair.
Can I just state why I think it is fair? Because I know what you're going to say, and I might as well just do this to lead you into it. Just
go
it.
On then.
Randomness is fair when there is no fixed period of time or fixed period. Random is fair in an infinite manner. That is true random. True random is infinite. That's what makes it fair. That's what makes it random. There. That's my devil's advocate stance. Damn it.
I'm just going to pick up on what Larry said quickly. We're starting with this concept because so many people argue that randomness is entirely fair and therefore things should be random. We're going to move on, hopefully, to illustrate why there are many more factors that should be taken into consideration. But we're going to build this one up layer by layer.
It's worth also noting, anyone who has any real heavy mathematical leanings or things like that, if you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper into mathematics, especially things like probability, you will learn, end of story, randomness is not random, because the moment you start adding something really fixed, there's a whole bunch of mathematical awesomeness behind this. And what we're trying to do is give a general overview to start.
And I completely agree with you. We are, in effect, talking about probability. But people use the fact that loot being random expresses to even probability all of the time. So again, we're going to start here and build it up. But you are absolutely correct. Randomness and probability are two utterly and totally different things, and one is not a reflective expression of the other. However, it is used in that way in general conversation all of the time. So we do not go raiding an infinite number of times. Therefore, if you're just rolling a dice, you're not going to get an equal share of the loot without an infinite time period. And it doesn't account for a million other factors. It doesn't address perception. I'm always unlucky with my rolls. This system is horrible. Therefore, moan, moan, groan, groan, complain, complain, unhappy people. As a guild leader, that's not good. You don't want that. Not only because you don't want to deal with it, because, hey, it's just not fun. Let's be honest.
No.
But frankly, you actually don't want people to be unhappy, full stop. Nothing to do with dealing with it. It's to do with good mindsets. So, if we can start with the premise that a random roll is not the best form of distribution, because it does not give people sorry Dist, yes, I'm a casual, I do not raid an infinite number of times, I apologize.
Oh my gosh, hold on, you've heard it here. Today happens to be, as I check my calendar, it is the 17th of March at 8:29:20, and we have officially declared Mizpah a raiding casual. I just want that to be known, because I know that's going to come back and bite us.
Let the record state. So the easiest thing to do is say, hey, let's all turn up and roll. 5-man group, hey, not a big deal, need greed. There's a little bit of a filter that's on there. It's not a bad system, but it's not a bad system for a group of people that meet like ships in the night, bump keels, and pass on their respective ways. It is a inherently bad system to track, manage, and distribute loot fairly based on effort, work, and reward for a set group of people over a longer period of time.
I like how you threw that kind of little extra bit of caveats in there, because the moment you start putting any kind of, I'd say, quantifiers into the actual, sorry about that. Any type of
Don't put your quantifiers into the whoops. It's
Don't put your quantifiers into the whoops. But the moment you start looking at it from no longer just the passing of the ships, but you're looking at, in your opinion, you've already started adding goals to the distribution model. You're looking at rewarding players for either time or effort, or you're looking at some kind of purpose. You're starting to put like the actual qualifiers in there. And I think that is something that inherently takes away the fairness of /Rand. Just in general, the moment you start doing that, Rand is no longer fair.
I don't think random is ever truly fair. It's quick, easy, accessible, and available. Those are its plus points. It's widely accepted because of its ease and its accessibility. No setup, no tables, no work, no spreadsheets. Easy to do. Inherently bad.
Bad. But anyway, yes. So we have these quantifiers and qualifiers now applied to prove why random is not fair.
So let's now go back to our initial two stances. Two good, solid stances someone might want to have. There are many others, but it's a start point. I want to make everyone happy that the loot distribution is even and everyone's getting a fair crack of the whip. Simple terms. We're a very casual guild, we raid a little bit for fun, we're sometimes successful, we're sometimes not, we just like to have a laugh, we want to share the loot around. How do we do that nicely and easily? Well, random roll's not going to meet that requirement very well. But a lot of people might be happy with it, so it could still be a valid choice for you if your principal concerns are quick, easy, fast.
Well, see, that's what
the perception of fairness.
Well, see, that's what I want to throw out there. You know, I actually got into a debate with somebody last week about this. They're like, you know, when I put a guild together, when we do this 40-man raiding in WildStar, in this particular case we're talking about, when we do raiding, it's all going to be literally /Rand, and whoever wins, wins. And I just went, how is that fair? And they're like, well, you know, everyone gets a fair chance. If you're there, you get a chance to roll for stuff, etc. And I'm like, so what happens then if you are going through a raid, you knock down your first boss, but then you choose to bench somebody for the second boss, they come back in on the third boss, they get a chance to roll, but they chose to help the group out by benching themselves. Are you going to punish them and put them on equal footing as everybody else? Because that's what it would come across and appear as. And his response was, well, those who don't like that can get out. And I went, I want you, I literally said this, I said, I wish you the best of luck in finding a 40-man group or raid contingent that is perfectly okay with /Rand as a loot distribution model. Because I'm sure there are people out there like that, but I can guarantee your turnover rate for raiders is going to be huge because, again, that perception of fairness is removed.
It's also unhealthy for the guild for various other reasons. Hey, I came in, had a really good night, I got 8 bits of gear, I went elsewhere.
Yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah.
No loyalty. Let's pick up on a couple more things. I want to pick up on a comment from Gothic Slicer, and I want to pick up on another great comment from BCS. I'm not yet going to expose in real detail what I personally think the best loot distribution system is, because that's putting the cart before the horse, but I have very definitive views on it.
Yeah, just as a reminder, this is not going to be the only episode. This is a series. This is literally a series on loot distribution, because you can't tackle this in an hour episode.
I'm going to pick up a comment from Gothic Slicer. And I'm going to be picking on various people, so please, no one take it personally here. But it's good to have straw men comments that I can mold and do things with. So they should implement
just say I said
damage. Okay. They should implement a damage DPS score where whoever has the highest number gets the loot, so the person who put the most work in it will get the reward they may deserve.
I am
Really,
so
Pseudo?
sorry, Gothic!
I don't think that's the best idea. And Calibros has just come up with one of the key arguments against it. Games are not inherently balanced for player DPS or for rewarding roles equally between fights.
No.
Let's go back to some really classic examples. Let's go back to Patchwork in WoW. That's a nice easy one. It's a nice simple fight. You walk in, boss stands there. You have to do a metric ton of DPS in a short period of time, or the raid group dies. Very little external stimulus to deal with. Stand still, DPS like a DPSing thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Good, solid boss mechanic.
Your typical boss tank and spank. Sorry, your
Yeah.
gear check, really. DPS check, actually.
Absolutely. Now, if I am class X at a given state of a given game, I can win the DPS meters for that fight. If I am class Y, I might need to be exponentially better than class X for that fight. If I'm a healer, I'm shit out of luck. So, to use that measure, the people that have the best damage, the highest DPS scores, did the most work, therefore they should get the loot, is inherently flawed. There might have been a druid that should have been 8th on the meters that came 3rd that was exceptional that fight, but he's not going to get rewarded for his perfect performance.
That's the thing. I mean, we've discussed this in a previous episode when we've talked, and especially if you go back and you look at the trilogy things that we've done, let's take that boss fight again, and let's say that we're giving away, we'll say points, earn points, fight points, cheese points, whatever you want to call them. We're giving away these points to people who we give 1 point for each level they are in the DPS meter, heal meter, what have you. Now, in the patchwork fight, there's really only like 2 people taking damage. The 2 tanks, or technically 3 depending upon which one you were doing, the tanks that are balancing around, which means the people who are AoE healers are going to be pretty much balled out because they're specifically set for a very certain type of fight, and yet there's only the tanks taking damage. And it just seems this is one of the reasons why I think it was a couple shows ago where you and I tackled DPS meters. I think it was last show, actually, where we tackled the concept of lol DPS meters and lol gear score. There is a reason why using those for actual the basis for your statistics is not always the wisest solution. Yeah. There's purpose for them, but at the same time, using them as the thing to make the final judgment call, it's a little flawed.
They're an input, they're not a solution.
Correct.
XMTS Varg says something really good here, which I think is a really good thing to bear in mind, irrespective of the system that you choose. But knowing why you've made the choices you're making and being able to communicate that is a big part to this particular solution. And I totally agree with it. You need smart, reasonable people in charge. That kind of inherently says that smart decisions have been made that meet the needs of the group at this point, and that everyone else needs to respect the people in charge enough to accept their decisions. Yep. Or why are they there? Or are the decisions not smart in the first place? I think that's a key component to actually people being satisfied with any loot distribution system.
Yes.
Have good choices been made for that group? Do people understand why those choices have been made? Has it been communicated? And do people have those people earned the relevant respect to be able to make those decisions and carry them easily?
That is something that's... I'm just going to throw out there. Remember, folks, if you're actually looking to have a good, strong, positive community, come check out the campfire tomorrow night as we discuss community-based things. And I wonder what our topic is going to be, considering I warn people it is one of the most damaging topics, most controversial topics ever. I wonder what it could possibly be.
So we'll take that comment from Varg, and I'm going to put it on a little pedestal on the imaginary shelf behind me and say that's going to apply to any system. It's a smart thing to do. It's a good goal to have. A big part of that is knowing why the choices have been made. Now, it's also been pointed out by someone, I think it was Mishtal, we need to touch upon not only progression-based rewards, but hey, guilds that want to have fun. people that want to get on, people that want a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And absolutely yes, and you may be making some different choices based upon those differing goals.
See, I agree with that. If I take it back to one of the actual systems that I had used, one of the things we did is we rewarded people who put time aside to farm materials. So we'd have a farm night, and people who showed up and farmed for that X period of time got a minor boost in their particular collective thing because they were helping progress the whole. That was one of the decisions that we'd made. It was just to help also build camaraderie spirit. That was one of our goals. And it was a good fun time. People weren't bored farming, especially considering we had jokes playing in the background and we were listening live to some like crazy stuff, and people would make song requests, and it was just a bunch of fun. But we did reward people for putting time aside. Had nothing to do with even a loot drop. It was just we were giving that kind of reward. So decisions like that are going to impact the models you go with. But
I'm going to pick up on a comment from Angelic Mayhem. Angelic Mayhem says, and I can't imitate Angelic Mayhem's voice because I don't know what it sounds like, so you're very lucky, Angelic Mayhem.
I know what it sounds
but Angelic,
like. I listen to his YouTube channel.
There we go. You can do the voice then, Pseudo. Over to you.
I am so bad at voices. Don't hate me, Angelic Mayhem. It's all Mizpah's fault. Just remember that. I disagree. It's too dangerous to trust that the guild leadership is 100% focused in the first place and 100% dedicated to fair distribution. I prefer to see game designers to build a system that offers rewards in an intelligent manner. And that was so not your voice in any way, shape, or form. What you don't see is my thumbs are in the pockets of my jeans like I'm a cowboy. And for some reason, I decided to make you into a cowboy. I'm really sorry.
Okay. Let's address that one. I think that is a little bit of a fallacious argument. Why do I say that? Because we're not trying to make an assumption here about the state of any given guild leadership. We're trying to say what would be optimal. And I think if you're in a guild where you inherently do not trust the guild leadership, that speaks of a wider issue that should possibly be addressed. You could decide to implement systems based on the fact there is rotation amongst your guild leadership, or you want to make sure there is no possibility of collusion, of distortion, terms we'll get into, there is no possibility of foul play amongst the loot distribution. And these could be valid choices to make as a group, but I suspect if these are real concerns, you're going to struggle to make those choices to implement a system that restricts those people because they're not going to let you do that in the first place. And I would personally go guild shopping, but that's just me.
Yeah. That's one of the things. A lot of people, when people go to look for guilds and things like that, they'll look at the distribution systems that people use. And a lot of people, in my opinion, have misimpressions of the reality behind different models. Now, you built something.
I did, and we'll show this, and this is not all the models, this just talks at a real high level before we go into more detail. But we'll show this, we'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about things you can do, choices you can make at a high level that are for a casual, have fun, reward people guild, and the sorts of choices you want to consider that are in addition to distribution models, or part of in some cases, for the we really want to progress diversion part of that path. And then at that point, I think we do Q&A.
We will do Q&A then.
This is the primer.
This is the thing. You know, like I said, guys, this topic is just way too big for us to try and tackle in one setting. So, Mizpah, Friday, I did the Lobzilla beatboxing. Can I get you to do a sort of beatboxy screen transition sound?
With my throat at the moment, no.
Fine. Right. Here we go, folks. Right over here, we are looking at why there are different systems to begin with. We are looking at different system attributes for a variety of systems. Everything from fixed price, zero sum, ranking, rolling, and bidding. By all means, this is not all of it. This was we need to start somewhere, so.
And this is a selection of major attributes and differences between different systems. This is not to dig into it or debate them necessarily yet, although we happily will. It's really to show how much variation there can be on the decisions people make, and why, therefore, there are so many systems. So, let's take a very quick look. We talked about rolling. This is the easiest one to understand. Well, rolling is not good for stimulation. Stimulation is...
Well, I was going to say, before you start going into that, why don't you define the lovely terms that we have at the top? For example, inflation, collusion. I mean, we know what they mean, but not everybody does.
It's a topic by itself, and there's a reason why I'm leaving it till later, but it has very strong merits. That is with regards to the topic of Loot Council. This slide was made really for something where we're really talking about DKP in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to laugh, BC Larius, when we get to my personal route as to how we do things. Or how I prefer to do things.
Go on.
So, stimulation, encouraging people to change their gear, encouraging people to take that 2% upgrade, even though it might cost them something, encouraging gear to always be used and for people to be involved. Well, if you roll and you win it, that's great. A lot of people do a roll, you don't get the next items. People don't always want to say yes. There's no inherent focus on stimulation in rolling. Okay. Bonus support. What's bonus support? You've been banging your heads against Valistras for a very long time. You're on your 6th week of wipes. The hunter's just summoned his pet pre-pull and wiped the raid again. Morale is low. And you want to give people a bonus for the first time they get that darned red dragon down. Difficult to do in some systems. You can't say to people, have a bonus when you're rolling, because there's no bonus to give. The number of items of loot don't go up. No one gets any other rewards. Of course, rolling gets a plus for complexity because there is no complexity. You roll, you win. Simples.
Simples. Shouldn't it be 2 pluses then instead of just 1 plus?
It possibly should, actually. It gets a plus for randomness. That's not the same as saying randomness is good. It's saying that it is pretty random. It gets a minus for fairness. It is not fair. And I absolutely now think, with the comment I made earlier, I should have put another column in that talks about probability.
Well, that's the thing. This was put together in we need to start somewhere. The thing is, expect in one of our episodes for us to actually pull out math. So this is just an overview.
And to agree with the comment, when properly, sorry Zenfar, as pointed out, you can't say rolling when run properly is more fair because rolling is inherently flawed. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. Yeah. I can even do another graph later to prove it. Inflation does not come into rolling. There is no currency that gains or loses value. Collusion doesn't come into rolling other than in the smallest form possible, whereby people decide not to roll to increase the odds of someone else winning the roll if you can roll in a time sequence and see that someone else already has a high roll. But really the impact on it is pretty meaningless because you don't know where you're going to roll.
Correct.
Distortion, there's really nothing to distort in this system.
Yeah.
So there we go. Rolling, hey, it is more random. It is less fair. It gets a plus for complexity because it's easy to understand. Complexity is a non-issue. Again, I could have argued that I should have minused that column to make it show that it's less complex. It all depends how you phrase the question.
This is why I said you need to actually speak on it. Now, I'm going to kind of cut here because, we are talking about these various things. We do have some questions we want to tackle pre-end of the show. Do we want to tackle some of these questions now? And something you guys will definitely want is any questions, comments, etc. that you really want us to dig into, or if you completely disagree with anything being said, do let us know because, we can bring it in, we can discuss it. We're here to debate things. And yeah.
Okay. I think what we'll do then is I won't dig into the rest of these till we get to the specific bits about DKP, which will be another show.
Yes.
Let's just say that's there. It exists. We're touching a
It'll
lot
get
on rolling
more.
on this show. There will be more. There are others.
There will be more columns. Probability will go in there. Mizpah approved, Pseudo approved.
So there we
Yeah.
go. Varg, I feel like I'm picking on people in the audience here. If you could please come up with a perfect random number generator, please contact me, prove it to me, and I will make you a millionaire. I will make myself a millionaire in the process, and we shall all live happily ever after. Unfortunately, it is not yet within the realms of anything other than theory to come up with a truly perfect random number generator. We can get very, very, very close, but close is not perfect.
Yeah, close is not perfect. They're still trying
You
to
did,
figure
in
that
fairness,
out.
say very random. You probably didn't mean perfect, but it's worth pointing out that perfect random numbers do not exist.
Yeah, that's true.
Seeds are your issue here. You have to have something to start the calculations from.
And only recently have they actually come up with a processor that might actually be able to introduce a proper amount of random using a particular crystal, and I'm not even going to start to go into depth.
I won't go into that.
I say might because although it's been a peer-reviewed paper, and I believe it's IBM who actually came up with it, they're still not completely sold on it. But yes, they are still trying to figure that one out. But anyway...
Yeah. Okay,
So-
let's touch on a couple of topics before we bounce into questions. We will overrun a bit here, but I think these are pretty key.
Okay.
We've talked a fair bit about, hey, there are systems, what is fair? We've talked a fair bit about why rolling is not fair. We haven't talked a lot about the sorts of choices that people might want to make to support a different aim.
That's true.
Although we have established two principal aims. One aim being fairness stroke perception of fairness stroke happy peeps. Let's simplify it right the way down to that.
Happy peeps.
This happy peeps. Happy peeps are good. And let's also say the other one is creating an environment where progression is encouraged and actively rewarded. Another way of phrasing the same stuff that I said earlier.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. The other thing that we want to make certain that we also point out is there are certain problems that exist when you start to go into loot distribution methods. For example, how do you decide to handle loot that is disenchanted or not used? How do you handle loot that is so rare that it's like legendary on a table? How do you handle items that are only class specific? We will be going into how do you put a value on loot in a loot distribution system, but that is a show for much later, but that is coming. One of the things that you had mentioned, by the way, collusion. Collusion itself is something that I'm curious if people actually know what it means, because it's one of those things where if you're familiar with somehow mathematics things work, etc., and you kind of know what collusion is, but not everybody does. So I want you, Mizpah, and I'm going to give you a chance.
Want me to go through collusion? Okay.
Just define collusion really quickly. It's not that hard.
Okay, I'll define collusion quickly. A number of people working towards a common aim that sways the predictable outcomes of a system at a given point in time.
Wow.
That'll be the most technical definition of collusion I could come up with on the spot.
Wow. And there is implicit and explicit collusion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things is how do you handle the actual balancing of the gaps that come up, and it's known as DKP gaps, although in some systems they're known as value gaps. These are problems that we will, but I want these in our viewers' brains because they themselves will start to go, oh, I've heard of this, I've seen this, and we've given them a small foundation. I want them to think about this stuff before we go into some of our other shows, because I want them to have that in their brain as to why we're actually going to be hitting certain models the way we do.
By the way, I just want to make the point. There are no stupid questions here. There are statements that are mathematically or logically perhaps more or less correct.
Correct.
We're going to point those out because that's part of our job here. However, every time someone comes up with a question, we go, no, perhaps. A ton of people are getting the information. And if you're thinking the question and prepared to ask it, I'm quite sure others are thinking it, but maybe not typing it out. So we welcome everything, be it right, be it wrong.
The one thing I will stress is if someone puts a question up and you yourself think, oh my God, that is the stupidest question I've ever heard, don't say that. Not everybody has the knowledge or the experience that you have. So be supportive here, folks. Make certain that you, oh yes, and I raise my chalice to the blank space. Hello, Viking King. But we're trying to make certain people get information. And if people are afraid to ask questions, I'm not going to be happy. I want people to ask these questions. There's a reason why I'm here. And if, by the way, if you have a question and you're afraid to ask it, voice at MMOBuff.TV. I'll be your voice. Just saying.
Okay, let's dive into the two things I just alluded to before we go into questions. So, something brought up earlier. We want to run, we're a group, we're a guild, we're a council, we're a whatever we might be. We're going to go and poke stuff and hopefully it's going to die, it's going to drop loot for us, we want to give that loot out. But what I really want to do, Pseudo, is I want to make everyone happy. I want happy people. I want to have fun. What can I do to manage my loot to make it simple and quick because we're casual, but let everyone have fun?
Well, first
returning the questions.
See, that's perfectly fine. The thing is, when it comes to that kind of a situation, the first thing you have to understand is that you can't please everybody. It ain't going to happen. What you can do, however, is make certain that everyone is aware of the expectations and the outcome and be very clear. And if they don't like it, you can help them out the door or they can leave themselves, etc. Okay. But in order to make people happy, they all need to understand the truth of things. They need to have things in clear cut as day. Don't be all like, well, I'm going to give the loot to Joe Bob because Joe Bob and I went fishing together last Friday.
So let's...
Unless that's part of your loot rules, in which case I'm going to hate you.
Let's elaborate a little more, shall we? So yeah, absolutely true. All system communication. Communication, fantastic. The more communication, the less chance for friction, the more chance for understanding, the less chance for speed bumps along the way. That's great. Let's be more practical. Rules, systems, choices. What can we do to encourage a group that wants to have fun, make it simple, have everyone enjoy themselves, and be super casual and have a great time knocking over dragons?
Very, very simple.
Because there are some practical suggestions.
Oh, there are. There are absolutely some practical. In fact, there's actually some practical loot distribution systems in which we could do something like that. One could simply put, if you're going to be that particularly casual about it, find somebody in your guild who will step up to the plate and actually do something a little complex so that everybody else can sit back and not have to think about it. But trust that individual. Because in all honesty, the more complex things get, the simpler it can be.
Rules and systems. What can we do with them to help with that?
I know you're trying to lead me somewhere, but I have no clue where you're trying to lead me.
It's actually a difficult question. It's not a simple question. Hence why I'm throwing it at you with no show notes and no prep and going, what will you say? And not knowing what you're going to say.
Okay, ask the question again. I will pretend to know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Systems and rules and choices you can make as a group, practical ones. What can you do with a loot distribution system to encourage fun, the perception of fairness, do it all in a casual way, keep it simple, and just have fun knocking over dragons?
See, my brain just immediately takes myself to use a loot distribution system that's been pre-built, so you don't have to think about it. Just make certain everyone agrees with it. You know, that's the thing is, when you first start up a guild, when you first start up a community, that is your goal to begin with. You want to have fun. You want to take down bosses. You want to have all that stuff. You want people to know where everyone stands. So you will use a system or a model already in place that you believe is fair. Now, in that particular case, you then would turn to your group, your friends, and you go, hey guys, I'm thinking of using Suicide Kings. Are you familiar with it? Do you think this is actually going to work out well? Yay, let's use Suicide Kings. And then you as a group use Suicide Kings and off you go. Or if everyone's like, no, we just want to slash Rand, well, then you deal with slash land, although I will tell you in the future you're going to have issues. But you use systems and models that are already in place, already built, and you pray that you've gone the right way. And when you find out you haven't, that's a different story.
So here's a few things. Firstly, I agree. One thing you can do is you can use an off-the-shelf system, but accept that it won't be perfect. Not everyone will love it.
There's no system that is perfect.
But communicate it, be clear about it, and
here we go.
Use it properly.
Fair enough. But the thing is, there is no one specific system that is 100% perfect because it's all about what your goals are. Your goals may be better suited to a loot council than your goals may be to something like, I don't know, zero-sum DKP. It depends on your goals. But, let me finish. However, something that also has to be kept in mind is that at the end of the day, most people will come up with their own twist or variation that adds what they believe is that next level, and then they will give it another name. You can glare at me all you want, Larius. That's fine.
I'm going to talk about in the post-show what I personally think the optimal system is for our given situation. But I'm not going to throw that out there on the YouTubes quite yet. We'll let that one come in after a few bits.
I do want to state there are going to be people, as you can see in our chat, who have very strong opinions about each thing. Depending upon how something is handled, people can have negative opinions on something. I have had people approach me and go, DKP sucks because of X, Y, and Z. They've had bad experience with it. Something has occurred or some kind of system, and what they felt should be fair wasn't fair. It is one of those things that I want to stress. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. We have our own opinion as to what works, which is why we run loot the way we run it in Enigma. But I also want to recognize that some people are perfectly fine using things like Suicide Kings. Some people are perfectly fine using things like Loot Council. Some people are perfectly fine using a mixed variation on things. Some people are fine with /rand, and that doesn't make them wrong.
So let's jump back into a few practicals for that question about that casual group. What can we do to make life easy and fun? Bear in mind, a major thing we're emphasizing here now is fun. So a few things happen that make things appear to be more fun for the group as a whole. Firstly, to make things fun, you want to avoid streakiness. What I mean by this is if one person gets 3 items of loot on the same night, other than for that person, the run as a whole is probably less fun for at least 2 other people that could have had an item. So whereas it's a perception thing, not a reality thing, one thing you can choose to do is set a rule and say unless it's not going to be used, no one gets more than 1 item of loot per run. That does have some downsides. It has some downsides with people hoarding points or doing whatever it is they do to get the item they want. It has the downsides about not stimulating people to take a given item if it's only middle of the road. So it has its minuses, but it has some pretty good pluses. You get a better distribution of loot, but that's far removed from an optimal distribution of loot. But the more casual you are, the less optimal is an issue to you. Hey, we went raiding and 6 people got stuff. Happy days. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing that you can do.
Items don't always equal fun. I do kind of want to throw that out there. But we do, the thing is, we have to remove the why are you raiding in the first place? Why are you in the guild that you're in? Why is your structure set the way it is? To try to take a more objective view of the loot systems as a whole. So I in this particular case, while I want to state fun doesn't always equate items, and believe me, if all you do is want items in a game, you and I will probably not run things together because that's not what's fun to me. But, you know, in this particular case, we're trying to be objective. So we are removing a bit of the extraneous, superfluous, to use a big word, stuff.
Okay, something else you can do if your aims and your goals are fun, casual, and not so worried about optimal, but people like it. You allow everyone in your fixed group to have a dream item list. They put down an item that's class specific, that's a dream item. They put down an item which is non-class specific, that is a dream item. What does that list do? It means that if that item drops, the people that have first port of call on it are those people that put it in their list. Now, to do this, you've got to take on some admin. You've got to find a way to record it. You've got to let people change it every 5 minutes. But what you're letting people do is saying, apologies, yes, on my use of language. This is my normal language. This is the scary thing.
No, it's the fact that I use pedantic and superfluous together in one episode. I also use filibuster, but I think that's common with you, so I don't think that really works.
It is. So what does this do? This lets people feel that their wishes are really being taken into account. Hey, I want the super duper chest plate of awesomeness. Yes, but I want the boots of righteousness. Yes, but that's not as good as the codpiece of joy. So I'm putting that down on my particular list.
Oh my
Now,
god! Hold on. You're putting the codpiece of joy on your dream list.
definitely on my personal list. Why wouldn't it be?
That's a great fight.
So,
I'm done. I'm done.
It simply means if that item drops, those people get to use whatever system you're using amongst themselves first. It is not particularly fair. It lets people play a game. And the game is, do I put down the best item in slot for my class? Do I put down the headpiece that everybody wants, but knowing I'll be in a bigger pool of people when it comes up? Or do I put down that really cool second best weapon that would still be an awesome upgrade, but know that I've got a really good chance of getting it if it drops? It lets people make their own value choices. And as long as, and this is really key, you can record them, stick to them, and not let people change them every 5 minutes, it does add some excitement and some fun to raiding. Casual guild, nice fun thing to do if someone wants to implement and organize it. Now then, systems themselves. Or should we park that one and go on to the other side of the coin?
We need to go to our QA now. I am throwing down the comment hammer.
Then I need 4 minutes because I have to put in the other side of the two sides we said we'd do before we went to Q&A. And I've only done the casual one.
All right, you go ahead and you take your codpiece of joy and go for it.
I'll quickly throw out some of the types of things you will want to consider if you are more progression orientated. A lot of these will be common sense. But firstly, what do you need to do as a group to be progressive? Let's define it as kill more bosses. Okay, I'm not going to debate that much, but kill more bosses. You want to put yourselves in a position to kill stuff you wouldn't otherwise kill sooner than you otherwise wouldn't have killed it. To do that as a group, you need to achieve certain things. Okay, here's the first one. If you are not using some form of tank priority and you are progressive, shame on you, because you really should be. The needs of the group have to be put ahead of the needs of the individual if you are going to try and be particularly progressive. But that also means your tanks need to be smart. Could be tanks plural, depends on the game, depends on the environment. And that means they don't get carte blanche. Hey, I'm a tank, I get the shoulders. Hey, I'm a tank, I get the shield. Hey, tank, I'm a tank, I get the codpiece of joy as well. It doesn't work like that. They have to be intelligent, and if they're not intelligent, it's not going to work very well. Tank priority, good. Second thing to consider if you're being progressive, you want to put in something to do with best in slot. Best in slot for class. You want to put in something that deals with optimal usage. If the item is better on a magic user rather than a physical user, until all the magic users have it, it should never, ever, ever be going to the other side of the fence. It doesn't matter if that trinket is second best in class for you. If it's better for someone else, you want to make optimal choices. Of course, there's divergence. It could be the one person that gets the trinket second is actually so darn good you want to give it to them because they're awesome. Fair play. You can do that. But it's all about making smart decisions that once again benefit the group, not the individual. A third thing you really want to consider if you're trying to be progressive, and I don't care if you need to tie them to a table, threaten them with pointy sticks, and force them to take it. No item of gear should ever be wasted. If an item of gear is only a 0.05% upgrade to a person, that's 0.05% once upon a time might be the difference between a kill or a non-kill. So you do not let people refuse upgrades. Ever. Really bad practice. There are more, but the principle is simple. Group first. Group efficiency first. Group progression first. Individual needs, desires, wants second. Build those sorts of things into your loot distribution system, and there are systems that are inherently better for this, and it will help with progression. And with that, what have we done?
I basically want to now take a giant cork and shove it in your mouth. And honestly, in
Will
all
that
honesty,
help with raid progression?
it might. It might. It just might. But in all honesty, what I expected to see was like a PowerPoint presentation, like a little PowerPoint slide.
Oh.
You just go.
I can do that. You might not want me to.
I will not let you bloody do a PowerPoint presentation on one of our shows. I will allow
here and here.
I will allow Venn diagrams. I will allow tables. I will allow graphs. But I will
Are we allowed a spider diagram? How about a 3D data cube?
Actually, yeah. I will let you do a 3D data cube.
Okay.
Because I think, in all honesty, it would probably be very applicable into the stuff that we're doing. But anyway, for those of you who have just joined, do keep in mind we did cover a bit, and you're going to keep your mouth shut for a couple minutes. I hear you going, I'm going to... No, sheesh. My turn. But anyway, for those of you who have joined us a little bit late, I do apologize. You have missed a big part of the discussion where we were discussing how /random is not necessarily fair. And this is stuff that you can catch on YouTube once this gets put up onto YouTube, which it will be done shortly. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I do apologize. You will be missing the post-show discussion. And there will be some things there because we're going to, quote-unquote, take our hair down, even though Mizpah looks like a duck right now, and we're going to discuss some other things. Now, I am going to have us answer a couple questions. Remember, guys, if you have questions, preface them with a Q and a colon so that they highlight for us and our moderator, Harsey, who is doing a brilliant job of collecting.
Question.
What is it with you interrupting me?
I'm good at it. Do we say our goodbyes and take our questions into the post show?
I will, let me check. Let me see how many questions we've got there. All right. I will, for the 4 questions that we currently have, anyone who has further questions that they wish to add, we will be bringing them to the next show because this discussion is not going to end on one show. Loot distribution, part 1, the subtle foundations of why /random should never be used for a raid group unless you're doing something like an LFR or something like that. Done. We're going to start getting much more technical in the next episode. And please, Kaz, can you punish him? That would be brilliant.
What have I done to be punished?
You imitated me earlier today, and then you brought up the cod piece of joy. To me, that just equates.
Okay, you have a point.
You get punished. Right. So what we're going to do is, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I do apologize. You are going to miss this next part because we are really going to take things to the next level. So yes, throw your questions in. We will do everything we can to answer them in the post show. Mizpah, what do you want to tell the people on YouTube?
You should have been here for the live show. Bye.
He's so mean. He doesn't seem to understand that, and everybody works from home like we do. But yes, for those of you on YouTube, I do apologize. You will be missing this. However, hopefully we will see you on a live thing. We are going to take a quick swap. Let you say goodbye to the people in the YouTube lands. I'll say bye to the people in the YouTube lands.
Goodbye, folks in YouTube lands. Thank you for joining us. Do join us again, and yes, we will try and fill you in a little later.
Yes. And on that note, I am also going to say Toodle pip to you in YouTube land, and it's time for us to enter into the post show. And we cut here. Greetings, everyone. Pseudo here. Thanks so much for watching episode 22 of our podcast, all about loot distribution this time. We've only just started. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you like the episode, please make certain that you like and share it. And of course, make certain you're following Doodle Pip.